Very well, thanks to our Stephen ASEAN Defense correspondent for that package there. And our guest this time, will be a security expert with Beacon Consulting Limited, Mr. Kabir Adamu. And good morning to you, Mr. Adamu. Thank you very much. Happy Independence.
My pleasure. Good morning and happy 63rd Independence to you too.
Indeed. Okay, security, of course, it's quite frankly, it's indispensable because without security, we'll have very little else. And it's been arguably, no, scratch that, it's not arguable. It has been a definite challenge, right through from independence till as we speak. The president this morning, in his speech, referred to his pledge and commitment when he was being inaugurated to securing, among other things, securing the lives, liberty, and property of all citizens of the country. Now, that has been a big challenge as we speak. We've just heard this report. Many of us know, even from our own knowledge of the fact that the country is not as safe in terms of traveling, for instance, by road to certain parts. I'd like you to, if you will, take an overview of where we are at now. Because when you see pictures, for instance, people abroad, when they see pictures of the capital, of the Federal Capital Territory, and you see these are pictures on social media, and you see life is continuing. You go to any of the other state capitals, life is pretty much going on as normal. There's gaiety, and all of that. So how, and yet we know, we will not kid ourselves, we know that these are very trying times. How do you juxtapose those two, where you see pictures of merriment from this very same Nigeria that we're hearing about in terms of security challenges, and then those of our men and women in the uniform that, as the president said in the morning, have paid the ultimate sacrifice in their quest to secure us?
Thank you, Uncle Yori. Now, it's quite instructive, the fact that we're celebrating our 63rd Independence anniversary. It is also quite instructive that the president chose words around security, protection, civil liberty to remind us of the struggle that we have endured over this 63 plus years. And I think it's also quite instructive to remind ourselves of the resilience that we present, or rather we represent as a people. It is that resilience that showcases what we are. And the fact that, for instance, in urban centers, you would see well, as it were, display of what appears to be a semblance of normality. And then sadly, you would also read on the page of the newspapers or see on TV, or for those especially who are living in rural areas who have to contend on a day-to-day basis the reality of the level of insecurity within the country. Now, if we juxtapose this vis-a-vis the fact that we live in a committee of nations, you would say that we are not, it's not good, but it's not also completely bad. To the extent, for instance, that we were able to celebrate this 63 years, despite all the challenges. And more importantly, like I keep on reminding a lot of people, this is the longest spell that we have experienced in a democratic system of government, as it were, in this Fourth Republic. If I'm right, this is the 24th plus year that we're experiencing democracy, the longest spell. Lessons have been learned over this 24 plus years. And if we allow ourselves to continue to learn this lesson, especially, and I want to emphasize this point, the democratic space continues to open up to allow for what the world, the direction that the world is going to now, which is equity, diversity, and inclusion. We are a multi-religious, multi-ethnic, and a lot of multis within our society. Mm-hmm. And if we allow the expression of those multis so that the average politician irrespective of which direction, whether he's liberal, whether he's social, or whatever, that he's able to express himself and people are able to align themselves behind that politician, then I think this journey that we're in, that no doubt has had several challenges, including security, would reach a destination where we would experience a semblance of stability beyond what we're experiencing at the moment.
Now, the president, as you know, has brought in a completely new security team. It's different. And he was speaking about this quest for the safety of the people. He was speaking about a new wave of interagency cooperation. And the service chiefs that I was speaking about earlier have been charged with doing everything that they can to enhance the security infrastructure. Well, two things I said in there. On the one hand, the security chiefs that have been charged to come up with, the modus operandi for enhancing our security operations, our security infrastructure is one thing. But also the matter of inter-service cooperation, that has been a problem in the past. I wonder if you think those two, because we have a completely new security outfit now at the headship of it, of course, and do you think that can further help this whole quest of, a better, more cohesive interagency cooperation? The police PPRO was, actually expressing some concern at the performance in that sector in the past.
It's easy to issue directives. It's easy to wish. It's also easy to hope. But what is difficult, and what, frankly, and this is our 63rd independence anniversary, we owe each other the truth. So I'm not going to sit on this platform and not say what I feel is the truth. We need to follow those wishes, those hopes with actions. It is not the expression of the desire for collaboration, for cooperation and coordination that would give us those three things. It is what platforms that we put in place to allow for the achievement of those three C's. I make bold to say here that if we want to see an improvement in our security, then we need to achieve those three C's. So in other words, we are not debating the desirability or not of the three C's of collaboration, cooperation, and coordination. What has happened over the years is the inability to put in place a veritable, efficient, and effective platform for the achievement of those three C's. And if I'm going to speak directly to Mr. President, with all the respect that I have for him, he needs to put up a team that would look at the framework and the methodology to achieve those three C's. And I'll give you a very simple example. If you put up our security, what I'll call the infrastructure, you will find out that we've got governing bodies for security. As an example, you have the National Police Council, you have the National Security Council, you have the National Defense Council. Those are examples of security bodies. And Uncle Larry, you would agree with me that it's been a while that any of those councils held. Now, they were not put in the Constitution for just putting sake. Though the makers of our Constitution, the philosophy behind the existence of those bodies has an instrumental element to achieve. And it's only when we make them functional and we realize their role that we'll be able to achieve some elements of those three C's. Then we go down to the security organizations. Let me call them the MDAs, the ministries, departments, and agencies. Depending on where you stand, they could be 27 or 29. And just to give you a sense of why I say that is, customs will argue with you that they are not a security department. They will tell you that they are more in tune with revenue generation than actual insecurity. For some of us, we see them as a security department. They do have a role to play. So depending on where you stand.
And they bear arms.
Exactly. They also serve in the border management component. They play a crucial role there. So that argument is neither here nor there, but then it has a huge place in international discussions. So I'm not going to wave it away. The point I'm trying to make is in those MDAs, you can categorize them into, say, three. You have the coordinating elements within those MDAs. So to give you an example, the Office of the National Security Advisor is a coordinating body. In fact, probably the highest, depending on where you stand. And then you have the Ministers of Defense, you have the Ministers of Interior, Minister of Police Affairs. They are all coordinating bodies. They play a role where they look at the other ministries, departments, and agencies that are under them, especially the departments and agencies, and coordinate their functions. So if you pick the Ministry of Interior as an example, you have the Fire Service, the Custodial Center, the Nigeria Immigration Service, all of them under that. The point I'm trying to make is to achieve coordination, collaboration, and cooperation, you have to now have a master plan, a framework that allows the security governing bodies to work towards a particular direction, and that now allows those security governing bodies to have some level of M&E, monitoring and evaluation competencies and capabilities in the activities of this, especially the coordinating ministers who are members of the security governing bodies. And then, of course, it now trickles down into the agencies under them. And I'm very happy to note that the immediate past administration of President Muhammadu Buhari realized this. He invested massively in security. At a point, the security sector was the largest single sector that was getting our budgetary provisions in terms of the percentage. No other sector, health, education, was receiving as much as security, yet the security challenge was not solved. So he realized there were gaps. And what he did was to put forward the Executive Order 13, which has now created a delivery system within the governance structure. So that delivery system is domiciled in the Office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation. And part of what that, it's called the CDCU, Central Delivery Coordination Unit. What that body would do is to look at the deliverables that the administration wants to achieve. And security is one of those deliverables. And under security, you have the desire to improve our military capabilities, the desire to improve policing. So all of those are deliverables, but you now have to break them down into key performance indicators as an example. So how do you now measure the performance of the various ministries of NDAs along the line of these key performance indicators? And that is where the role of these coordinating elements, the CDCU and all the others will come in. And I'm hoping that in the next few weeks, perhaps, the president will actually sign the bond with the ministers on these deliverables. So if we pick security as an example, the president will sign a bond with the various ministers that are involved in security. So this is how to achieve collaboration, coordination, and cooperation, where you look at the functions of all of these bodies geared towards a particular goal. That goal is something that we can also debate. What will be the goal of security? Is it to reduce fatality? Or is it, as you mentioned earlier on, to allow me to travel from point A to point B? Or is it to reduce kidnapping? That is where the real meat is, and that is where this CDCU will have to now agree. And then, of course, like I said, the president will sign that bond. So our role, you and I, you, the media, is to keep an eye on that and to put pressure on the various elements that I've just mentioned. I'm worried that almost, I think, 3 months or 4 months into this administration, we've not seen the security governing bodies sitting, just like it happened in the last administration. So that's one area that needs to be corrected, and I'll call that security sector governance. It has a lot of elements under it. The second element is security sector reform, to completely democratize the security sector through a reform process that allows some form of performance measurement, just like I've mentioned earlier on. If we're able to achieve this, then we can look back at the end of either 4 years or 8 years to say progress has been made. Sadly, and I say this with all sense of responsibility, if we just wish and we don't work on these elements I've mentioned, we're not going to achieve much.
Indeed. Now, the other thing that I thought I'd bring to you this morning, we're 9 p.m., is whether you think the official attitude to this whole matter of banditry and terrorism, has changed. I say that against the backdrop of the fact that that for a long time government was reluctant to refer to the outlaws as insurgents or terrorists and all of that, but it came to the time when they didn't have a choice. Now, I wanted to link that position to whether it's an important aspect of our fight against the insurgents and the bandits and the terrorists, the fact that there would appear to be some measure of empathy, dare I say it. I know it's an awesome thing to say, but the point has been made that these people are not, they're not foreigners. These people that we're fighting against, that we're struggling with, are actually Nigerian nationals. And so many people that look at the resources that you just cited, the tremendous resources that was devoted, that had been devoted to, our military by the previous regime, and we haven't made as much headway as we would think. And when we question people who should know about it, they say, well, there is no doubt that the Nigerian army is able to do the needful if only it had, quote unquote, a free hand. So this has always been a problem where it would appear that, is it diplomacy, is it politics, is it something else that has to be considered alongside all the scientific aspects of counterterrorism that our men in uniform have to adopt? The fact that they cannot have a zero tolerance for an outlaw and, quote unquote, take him out if necessary.
So it's been proven through studies that fighting terrorism, counterterrorism, and anti-terrorism require maybe just about 20% of military force. The rest of the 80% is actually from the whole of society elements. And I think that is where we got it wrong in Nigeria. We attempted to correct that through introducing several elements of our counterterrorism strategy. So if you pick up the Terrorism Prevention Act, you discover as an example that we have a sanctions list. And Uncle Yuri, I urge you, it's an available document online. You go online and check who, what, and who are in that sanctions list. Now, the purpose of that sanctions list, it's an international platform that allows for collaboration in supporting counterterrorism efforts. In other words, individuals and groups that are named in that sanctions list are eligible to the whatever anti-terrorism or counter-terrorism measures we're implementing in country. And I was a little bit shocked the last time I looked at that sanction list at how bare it is. It has a history in the sense that there is a sanctions committee. That committee are the ones who are supposed to recognize through law. Of course, the Attorney General of the Federation is the first person who recognizes, for instance, or listens to a petition regarding the activities or functions of a particular individual. And then, it goes through a process, and then that individual or that group or that company is added to that sanctions list. And then the whole weight of our laws will now befall that individual. And not just ours, the international community too that are fighting terrorism. Now, sadly, just like a lot of things in Nigeria, we've done the process, but we are not implementing it the way it should be. The list is a little bit vague, it's there, and that therein lies part of our challenge. For some reason, the military has put itself in the forefront of this challenge, and it shouldn't be. It should be a whole of society approach that uses all the elements, including legal, economic, and of course the military elements. So just to give you a sense of what I'm trying to say, if a particular individual like Dogo Gide, that we all agree should be on that list, and that is not on the list at the moment, if he's entered into that list, it means all the elements of society, the security elements, the media, everybody, in fact, is able to contribute to bringing down Dogo Gide. He has businesses that he is running at the moment. Some of us know those businesses. Why are those businesses allowed to run? It's not the military that should go and stop those businesses. It's an element of a combination of both the federal elements as well as the state elements where those businesses are operating. So I don't know if that has answered your question, but the point I'm trying to make is that this emphasis on the military support or contribution to counterterrorism, we should come back from it. We should look at the real elements. We've got a law. The law is very clear about how to tackle terrorism. The law is very clear about how you should categorize an individual, a group, as a terrorist group. And once that is done, then, of course, the next thing is to use the existing laws to go after that person. Now, we're not doing very well in that regard.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Mr. Adamu, because you have indeed, also, speaking diplomatically yourself, necessarily, I got you, because for a long time they were known, these people who are fighting their own fatherland, they were referred to as unknown soldiers. But there are many who have said that is a misnomer, because they are known. Whether we are ready to do anything about it is the further challenging position that they put forward. And as is well known, there are many that are really making a killing, business-wise, if you want to call it that, from the continuing of hostilities. If Nigeria were suddenly to become peaceful today and for there to be no iota of insecurity, it is said that there are a lot of billionaires that will suddenly be out of sorts. And the skeptics particularly put this forward. Now, it might well be that they are overstating the simplicity of the case. But very much as we know, when it goes to the other side of town, which is this vexed subsidy, fuel subsidy, the same argument is in there, that if it was to be doable, relatively easily doable, there are a lot of billionaires, not millionaires, billionaires, that will suddenly be out of sorts. And so these people, reportedly, are doing all that they can to prevent it. So when you go to security, perhaps it's understandable why there will be a power block that is not exactly happy that everything, that is not happy for the whole security apparatus to be in conformity with what can be put down on paper, for instance, in terms of the figures that the amount of investment in this cause that you cited from the previous administration, right into the Tinubu administration, who is saying that he will do all that he can. Well, it remains to be seen how much of that all can actually be deployed and for us to still have the stability that we require to get on with the rest of our lives.
Yeah, I mean, the truth of it is it's a matter of, so I learned something from the Europeans. They talk about trust is good, but control is better. In other words, you appoint somebody, you trust him, but then how do you control that person to make sure that person does what you want? And that, I think, is what I would strongly urge Mr. President to look closely at. He's done his part. He's appointed individuals. He's also come out with an agenda. The last time you and I discussed, I read out those agenda.
That's right.
Agenda. I believe that anyone who is interested should pick up the Renewed Hope, document. They're listed there. Almost all security experts that I know, including myself, agree that that's the way to go. What, of course, is missing is how to achieve that. And that's what, when I talked about the Central Delivery Coordinator Unit, the effort they are going to do, don't forget that he also came up with this committee, policy, I'm trying to remember, PAC. He came up with that committee, and that committee also came up with a document which spells out the methodology to achieve some of the policies that he's envisaging. So a lot of work is being done, but what would really determine whether that work will be achieved is the control mechanisms he puts in place. So again, I want to refer to M&E. I love talking about M&E, even though in security parlance they will tell you M&E is a little bit difficult, but I don't agree. M&E is monitoring and evaluation. You have to find a way to ensure that key performance indicators are derived from the deliverables that have been agreed upon, and you now have to have a mechanism for measuring the performance and achievement of those persons that have been given that responsibility. And otherwise, it will be very difficult to see ourselves out of this very difficult quagmire that we're in. It's sad, it is embarrassing, it is denying us of so many things. I run a company, and what I do is I support businesses, especially international businesses that are interested in investing in Nigeria. Now, I know that security is one of the concerns. The first thing when you're discussing with an international organization, when he or she is itemizing risks, the first security risks that I identified are security related. And part of what we do is to assist them in managing those risks so that they are able to do their investments. And then, of course, so security is a huge challenge. I've just given an indication. The other one is for us as Nigerians, for you to live a normal life in Nigeria, you invest massively in security. And that's money that could have been invested in something else. You want to travel, so many considerations. So getting ourselves out of this security quagmire will improve the quality and standard of life in Nigeria. And I'm happy that the government is dedicated towards it. But like I said earlier on, that dedication would only become fruitful if they follow it up with measures that would allow for the achievement of that dedication. And I've identified some of the ways to go about doing that. Let's come back from this over-concentration of the military effort. The military is important, but we should look at security from the entire prism of what modern security is, which is human security. Let's give every component of security its place within the national security architecture and look at them with M&E components, key performance indicators, measure their contributions, and where we find persons who are failing, who cannot contribute as much as they want, we show them the way out. It's, honestly, it's as simple as that.
Indeed. And, you know, when people speak theoretically, it is the police that should really be in charge of internal security by and large. But there are occasions when the army, when military force is brought in to bring a situation down to that which the police can effectively continue with. But there are arguments that for too long, governments in Nigeria have sort of just skipped the police and gone over to the ultimate force, which cannot then be deployed, as it were, as we say locally, with our eyes closed, meaning you have to open your eyes that this is lethal power. It just so happens that it has been thought to be the easier way to address some situations. But then over the decades, we've arrived at a situation where it's hardly ever been brought down to the level that the civil authorities, the police, can now take over. And I want to combine this comment with another, which is, we were told at one time that governments, especially in the last administration, was doing something called debriefing. You know, prisoners, you know, I don't know if they are properly called prisoners of war, but Boko Haram elements and all these other kind of people, it was reported that they will be taken, then they will be debriefed, and then they will be fed back into the system. I can't vouch for the veracity of that particular aspect of it, but it was something out there that they are Nigerians, and if they repent, if we can debrief them, get their head thinking straight, then they put them back in the system. There are a lot of Nigerians that were skeptical about that approach, that, wait a minute, how do you know, because you spoke about trust just now in relation to the commanders, how do you know that you can really trust these people? Are we not sort of taking one step forward and then two steps forward and one step backward at the very best?
Yeah, so two questions. Let me start with the policing question. Under President Muhammadu Buhari, a lot of investment was made to improve policing. And the best for me, if I'm going to single one thing out, is the revision of the Police Act. A lot of us agreed that that revision was overdue. I think the first Police Act was introduced around independence time. So in summary, it took us almost 60 years to review the Police Act. And clearly, over that 60 years, from a post-colonial posture, or even you can argue from a colonial posture to a military posture, and then to a now more democratic posture. So what that administration attempted to do was to introduce democratic tenets into the Police Act. So when NSAS happened, it was because we felt the police was not in tandem with our democratic aspirations. Human rights abuses, heavy-handedness, and all of that. So that was remarkable, really. But sadly, like I've been saying since I started this conversation, we haven't seen a lot in terms of the implementation of that revised Police Act. There are several elements of it that are yet to be implemented. One of the most notable ones is the desire to achieve community policing. We've all agreed that community policing is the way to go. Now, under that act, there is supposed to be a community policing committee in each of the 774 local governments. And then the police was also desired under that act to recruit police constables, individuals within various communities that are supposed to contribute to policing. These are private individuals. They are not necessarily police officers, but they would contribute towards the community policing philosophy. Sadly, neither of these components is effective. I'll tell you that they've been achieved, quote unquote. In other words, the structures are there. But for each one of them that you pick, there were challenges that prevented them from becoming effective. Second point is the desire by that administration to recruit 10,000 policemen every year. And sadly, that was mired in argument. And in places that should not have argued about it at all, because they were the beneficiaries. So it was the police service, the PSC, the Police Service Commission, and the Office of the Inspector General of Police that were argued over who should recruit these 10,000 police personnel. And sadly, over the life of the administration, I think only 20,000 were recruited. Even the 20,000, as far as I know, up to a point, their salaries were not being paid because of this argument. Good news is that it seems we've put that argument behind us. We've got remarkable individuals at the moment that are heading the two organizations. The PSC, headed by former Inspector General of Police, a fine gentleman, and then the current acting Inspector General of Police. They've shook each other's hand. They have abandoned the animosity. And as far as I know, a committee has been set up by the two organizations, and the recruitment will now take place. From what I'm hearing, the intention is to recruit 30,000 policemen within a speed of probably 3 to 4 years of the lifespan of this administration. So that's a remarkable progress in terms of policing. I've also listened carefully to the comments of the acting Inspector General of Police. He said he's done so many things that are encouraging and that I think would allow us to see an improved policing over the span of this administration. So he's talked about technology. He's talked about the curricula of the various policing training, in academies. He's talked about the investigation capabilities and competencies of the police, and named them the desire to close the gap between the citizenry and the police so that intelligence will be better gathered and all of that. All of these are remarkable things. But I also urge him not to throw away what has been achieved by the previous administration. As far as I know, there is an office called POTO, which is the Police, I think, Transformation and Reform Office or something like that. But the acronym is POTO, P-O-R-T-O. That office has a lot of resources. It combines government and international non-governmental organizations who came together to support the previous administration's desire for a reformed police. And they came up with a roadmap. So that roadmap, I would urge the current acting Inspector General of Police not to throw away that roadmap. It has identified the challenges within policing, and I think implementing it would help him achieve the same desires that he has set out to achieve. So I think that's that for policing. There are several other components around that I think we can probably discuss at some point.
Indeed.
With regards to your second question, which has to do with counter-terrorism. Under the we have a strategy, counter-terrorism strategy in Nigeria. It's domiciled in the Office of the National Security Advisor. And in fact, there is a commander, counter-terrorism, who is in charge of that, component of our security requirements. There is what is called de-radicalization and counter-radicalization. Now, under that desire, we have an operation called Operation Safe Corridor. Now, Operation Safe Corridor was introduced as far back as, I think, 2013 or 2014. I remember the then Minister of Foreign Affairs, who is the current WTO head. She took that document, went to the UN General Assembly, and in one of the side meetings, introduced that document to the world. And it was well received.
Okay.
At the end, about 12 countries decided to support us in the implementation of the Operation Safe Corridor. Now, why am I giving you this background? Just to give you a sense that we didn't just wake up as a country.
Yes, I really appreciate it. I think it's very important.
Exactly. So what the government did at that time is to create a center, and I think that center is domiciled in Gombe, where so-called repentant, name them
terrorists, whatever.
Yeah, they would go through the process of rehabilitation, de-radicalization, and then hopefully at the end of the session, they will come out de-radicalized. Now that is what is on paper. Sadly, I'm not aware that any auditing has been done.
Exactly.
The veracity and the functionality of that process. But that's what's on paper, and I know that it's been going on for a while. Now, the second element are the suspects that have been arrested under terrorism charges and that are being held in detention. My organization, Beacon Consulting, like I told you, at the last count, we had 56 files of mothers who have come to us to cry that their sons were picked up for one reason or the other. And allow me, I know this is national TV, but the point I'm going to make is very important, and so that people listening will understand that when we're making comments around this issue, we should be very careful. This is a case of two individuals. The mom of one of them came to our office, so we've got a file on it. It was two men interested in a lady somewhere in the northwest of Nigeria. When the lady's attention started tilting towards the other guy, this other person, who was a security personnel, accused his rival, as it were, that he was a member of one of these terrorist groups.
Yes.
That's how that guy was arrested.
So abuse can enter into the process.
Exactly.
That's the point that you are making.
Why am I bringing this up? I'm bringing this up because of the relevance of the legal component. We need to take ourselves back to the provisions of the Terrorism Prevention Act.
I hear you, sir. And also international best practices. I beg your pardon for interrupting you, but I wanted to play a clip because all of this depends on our glorious men and women in uniform, and they're being properly encouraged. And I think the president spoke about something about remuneration. Just listen to this clip.
Is being extended through the expansion of the cash transfer program to an additional 15 million vulnerable households. My administration shall always accord the highest priority to the safety of the people, inter-service collaboration, and intelligence sharing have been enhanced. Our service chiefs have been tasked vital responsibility of rebuilding the capacity of our security services. Here, I salute and commend our gallant security forces for keeping us safe and securing our territorial integrity. Many have paid the ultimate sacrifice. We remember them today and their families. We shall equip our forces with the ways and means needed to perform their urgent task of the people. We shall continue to make key appointments in line with the provisions of Constitution and with fairness towards all men, women, youth, and physically challenged shall continue to be given.
Okay, so that went on a bit longer than I wanted, but I was trying to, if you're still there with us, Mr. Adamu, trying to, bring up the point that it went beyond that point, but it was that they were able to do that which they could in terms of encouraging, and incentivizing our men in uniform. And then the president went on to also bemoan the fact that we're losing, we have lost in this quest some of our, our soldiers. So it's as if the president was saying that, look, this is costing us plenty. It's not just money, but also in the ultimate sacrifice by some of our men. I'm afraid we really don't have, the time to, pursue it much further. But I do want to say, Mr. Adamu, Mr. Kabir Adamu, the expert at Beacon Consulting Limited, where he is CEO. Thank you very much for the insight that you bring to this matter, and also something of a historical perspective on the transitions in this whole security endeavor that Nigeria is still currently engaged with. So I want to thank you very much, Mr. Adamu, for your time this morning. Appreciate you, and once again, happy independence.
My pleasure, and happy independence to you too.
Indeed. Okay then. So.